The bark scraped against Marcus Turner's palms as he clung desperately to the ancient oak, his legs wrapped around its massive trunk. Below him, the drone's propeller blades whirred menacingly, its camera lens staring at him like an unblinking eye. Officer Chen's voice crackled through the megaphone. "Turner, you've got nowhere to go. Come down now." Blood trickled from a gash on Marcus's forehead where he'd struck a branch during his frantic climb. His cheap knockoff sneakers, bought from a street vendor just 2 days ago, offered no grip against the wet bark. The rain that had started as a drizzle was now a steady downpour, making each movement treacherous. "I didn't do it," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "You've got the wrong guy." The drone inched closer, its mechanical whine growing louder. Marcus pressed himself against the tree, trying to become one with it, as if he could somehow absorb into the wood and disappear. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. None of this was supposed to happen. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus Turner had never been particularly good at anything. At 32, he worked as a part-time janitor at the Riverside Community Center, lived in a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant, and spent most evenings watching conspiracy theory videos on YouTube. His criminal record consisted of one shoplifting charge from when he was 19. A pack of gum he'd forgotten was in his pocket. His mother had died when he was 25, leaving him completely alone. No siblings, no father he'd ever known. Just Marcus, and his dreams of one day mattering, of uncovering something important that would prove he wasn't just another invisible person society had forgotten. But Marcus had dreams, big dreams. He'd been saving every penny for months to buy equipment for his podcast about government cover-ups and alien abductions. He called it Truth Seekers Underground, though he'd yet to record a single episode. The microphone alone cost $300, and he'd been eyeing a professional-grade camera for video content. His apartment walls were covered with printouts articles about government surveillance, corporate corruption, mysterious disappearances. Red string connected various points on a map of the city, marking locations where he believed incidents had occurred. His neighbors thought he was paranoid. His therapist, whom he'd stopped seeing because he couldn't afford the sessions, had called it maladaptive pattern recognition. Marcus preferred to think of himself as ahead of the curve. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Marcus arrived at the community center at 6 a.m., keys jangling on his belt. The place wouldn't open to the public until 8, giving him time to clean the gym, mop the hallways, and set up chairs in the meeting rooms. He was emptying trash cans in the weight room when he heard voices from the director's office. The door was slightly ajar, and Marcus couldn't help but pause. "Need to move the shipment tonight. The feds are getting too close." The voice belonged to Richard Blackwood, the center's director. Marcus had always thought Blackwood was too slick for community service work, with his designer suits and luxury sedan. "What about the security cameras?" asked another voice Marcus didn't recognize. "I'll handle that. I've got the codes. Just make sure your guys are ready at midnight. Use the back entrance by the dumpsters." Marcus's heart pounded. This was the kind of conspiracy he'd always believed existed. Real corruption, happening right under everyone's noses. He fumbled for his phone, fingers trembling as he opened the voice recorder app. But in his excitement, he knocked over his mop bucket. The metallic clang echoed through the hallway. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached the door. Marcus grabbed his cleaning cart and pushed it quickly down the hall, trying to look busy. Blackwood emerged from his office, his eyes scanning the corridor. "Turner? That you?" "Yes, sir. Just finishing up the weight room." Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. Blackwood stared at him for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Carry on." The next few days, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about what he'd overheard. He started paying closer attention to Blackwood's activities, noting when he stayed late, who visited his office, which doors he used. Marcus even bought a small camera on Linenot, the professional one he'd been saving for, but a tiny spy cam he could hide in the potted plant outside Blackwood's office. He felt like a real investigator, gathering evidence for his first big exposé. This would put Truth Seekers Underground on the map. He imagined the headlines, Local janitor exposes major corruption ring. Maybe he'd even get a book deal. On Friday night, Marcus decided to stake out the community center. He parked his beat-up Honda Civic across the street, armed with gas station coffee and a bag of chips. At 11:45 p.m., just as Blackwood had mentioned, a black van pulled up to the back entrance. Marcus's hand shook as he recorded with his phone. 3 men emerged from the van and began unloading boxes. Blackwood appeared, gesturing for them to hurry. In the dim light, Marcus couldn't make out what was in the boxes, but they looked heavy. Then disaster struck. His phone, propped on the dashboard, slipped and hit the horn. The brief honk cut through the quiet night like a gunshot. Everyone froze. One of the men pointed at Marcus's car. Blackwood squinted in his direction. Marcus panicked. He turned the key, but in his haste, he flooded the engine. The car sputtered and died. The men were now walking toward him. So Marcus did what seemed logical at the time. He ran. He made it 3 blocks before realizing he had no plan. His apartment was too far, and he'd left his phone in the car. Behind him, he could hear shouting and the slam of car doors. That's when he saw the park, Riverside Park, where he'd played as a kid. He knew every path, every hiding spot. The memory hit him as he ran his mother, bringing him here on weekends, teaching him to climb trees because she said every kid should know how to reach for the sky. She'd been a dreamer too, always talking about how her son would do great things one day. "You're special, Marcus," she'd say. "You see things others miss." Marcus sprinted through the entrance, his lungs burning. The park was pitch black, the city having shut off most of the lights due to budget cuts. He stumbled over roots and rocks, branches whipping at his face. Behind him, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. His foot caught on a root, sending him sprawling. For a moment, he lay there in the dirt, tasting blood where he'd bitten his tongue. "Get up," he told himself. "This is your moment. This is what all those hours of research prepared you for." He pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the sharp pain in his ankle. He needed height. If he could climb one of the old oaks, maybe they'd pass right by him. It worked in movies, didn't it? As a kid, he'd been an excellent climber. Of course, that was 20 years and 60 pounds ago, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Marcus picked the largest tree he could find, its trunk thick as a car. He jumped, grabbed the lowest branch, and hauled himself up. His muscles screamed in protest. One branch, then another. Higher and higher he climbed, until the ground disappeared in the darkness below. That's when he heard the sirens. By morning, Riverside Park was swarming with police. Marcus, still clinging to his tree branch 20 feet up, watched in bewilderment as officers cordoned off areas with yellow tape. K9 units sniffed through the underbrush. A news van pulled up. Detective Sarah Ramos stood at the base of the tree, looking up at him with a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "Mr. Turner, I'm going to need you to come down." "I can't," Marcus called back. It was true he'd looked down once and nearly fainted. "They're after me. Blackwood and his crew. They're running some kind of smuggling operation out of the community center." Detective Ramos raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Turner, Richard Blackwood was found dead in his office this morning, shot twice in the chest. Your phone was recovered from a vehicle at the scene, along with video footage that places you there at the time of the murder." The world tilted. Marcus gripped the branch tighter. "What? No, that's impossible. I was watching them unload boxes. I was investigating. The security footage shows you entering the building at 11:50 p.m. You were the last person to see him alive. But I never went inside. I ran when they spotted me. Sir, we have evidence that suggests otherwise. Now please, come down before someone gets hurt." Marcus's mind raced. This was a setup. It had to be. But who would believe him? A janitor with delusions of being an investigative journalist, caught red-handed at a murder scene? "I need my lawyer," he said weakly. "You can call one from the station. Now come down." But Marcus couldn't move. Fear had frozen him in place, his arms locked around the branch. Below, more officers gathered. Someone brought a ladder. The truth, as Marcus would never learn, was both simpler and more complex than his conspiracy theories. Richard Blackwood had indeed been running an illegal operation, not smuggling drugs or weapons, but selling community center equipment and pocketing the money. The boxes contained nothing more sinister than basketball hoops and exercise machines destined for black market buyers. The real killer was James Morrison, the center's assistant director, who'd discovered Blackwood's scheme and decided to take over the operation himself. He'd shot Blackwood, then noticed Marcus's abandoned car, with the phone still recording. It was the perfect opportunity to frame someone else. Morrison had taken Marcus's phone into the building, ensuring it captured footage that would place him at the scene. He'd even used Marcus's keycard, which Blackwood had in his desk to make it look like the janitor had entered through the employee entrance. By the time investigators might have uncovered these details, it was too late for Marcus Turner. The morning stretched into afternoon. News crews gathered at the park's edge, their cameras trained on the bizarre spectacle. Local man refuses to descend from tree-following murder investigation. The headlines would read. Social media lit up with jokes and memes. Tree guy began trending. Marcus's legs had gone numb hours ago. His fingers were cramped into claws from gripping the bark. He'd tried to explain about the recording, about what he'd witnessed, but Officer Chen kept asking the same questions. Why did you run? Why won't you come down? Below, someone had brought his laptop from the car. They'd found his Truth Seekers Underground files, his conspiracy board photos, his manifesto about government cover-ups. Detective Ramos was flipping through printouts, shaking her head. Mr. Turner, she called up, we found your research. All these theories about the community center being a front for government operations. Is that why you confronted Mr. Blackwood? No, Marcus's voice cracked. I mean, I thought something was happening, but not government, just regular crime. I was trying to be a journalist. A psychiatrist had been called to the scene. Dr. Patricia Wells stood beside the detective, making notes. Marcus could imagine what she was writing. Delusional, paranoid, disconnected from reality. Everything he'd feared people thought about him. As the rain began to fall that afternoon, Marcus's situation grew more desperate. The tree, slick with water, became impossible to navigate. Officers tried to coax him down, but he was paralyzed by vertigo and fear. They brought in a police negotiator, then a cherry picker from the fire department. I'm innocent, Marcus kept repeating, his voice growing hoarse. You have to believe me. But the evidence seemed overwhelming. His phone, his presence at the scene, his bizarre behavior, even his YouTube history full of videos about government conspiracies and cover-ups painted him as unstable. As the drone moved in for a closer look, Marcus made a fatal error. He tried to swat it away, losing his grip on the branch. His rain-soaked hands couldn't find purchase on the wet bark. He scrambled, grabbed for another branch, missed. Time seemed to slow as Marcus fell. 20 feet doesn't sound like much, but it's more than enough. He hit several branches on the way down, each impact sending shockwaves through his body. The last thing he saw was the gray sky through the canopy of leaves. Marcus Turner died on impact, his neck broken. He was 32 years old. The investigation that followed was perfunctory. With the main suspect dead and evidence pointing clearly to his guilt, the case was quickly closed. James Morrison attended the funeral, offering condolences to Marcus's sister. He even suggested setting up a memorial fund, though it never materialized. 3 months later, Morrison was promoted to director of the Riverside Community Center. He discontinued the late-night special programs that Blackwood had been running, citing budget constraints. The black market buyers found other sources for their equipment. Marcus's apartment was cleaned out, his possessions donated to charity. The spy camera he'd hidden in the plant was never found. The battery had died days before the murder. His unused podcasting equipment was sold to a pawn shop. His hard drive, containing hours of conspiracy theory research and half-written scripts for Truth Seekers Underground, was wiped clean and recycled. The oak tree in Riverside Park still stands. Children climb it during summer afternoons, unaware of its history. There's no plaque, no memorial. Marcus Turner's death became just another cautionary tale about mental health and social isolation, discussed briefly in true crime forums before being forgotten. Detective Sarah Ramos retired 5 years later. The case still filed away as solved. She sometimes wondered about the janitor who'd climbed a tree rather than face arrest. The evidence had been convincing, but something about it had never sat right with her. The way the phone footage was angled, the lack of any real motive, Marcus's genuine confusion and fear. But in law enforcement, you learn to live with doubt. Cases need to be closed, statistics maintained. The truth, as Marcus had always believed, was often more complex than it appeared. He just never imagined he'd become part of someone else's cover-up, another casualty of the very conspiracies he'd spent his life trying to expose. 6 months after Marcus's death, a teenage blogger named Jessica Kim started investigating the unusual number of equipment purchases at Riverside Community Center. Her blog post, titled, "Where Did All the Money Go?" raised questions about financial irregularities during both Blackwood's and Morrison's tenures. Morrison threatened to sue her for libel. The post was taken down. Jessica moved on to other stories. The truth remained buried, just as Marcus was. In the end, Marcus Turner died as he had lived misunderstood, overlooked, and ultimately alone. His story became a footnote in the local paper, his death attributed to his own foolishness rather than the cruel machinations of others. The real criminals walked free, their secrets buried with an innocent man whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time and believing he could be something more than just a janitor with a dream. The truth seekers never found him. The underground never heard his voice. And high in that old oak tree, on quiet nights when the wind is still, some say you can still hear the echo of his last words, "I didn't do it." But nobody's listening anymore. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video.